Welcome to Two Way Tonight. This evening's episode written entirely by ChatGPT. Thank you for joining. I'm Mark Halperin, and I'm delighted that you're closing your weekday here in America with us, 6 p.m. Eastern Time in New York City, and 3 p.m. in Los Angeles, California. Other times, other places. Glad to have you here. John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, will be our guest in the second half of the program. He's written a new book that we will talk about called Heaven Help Us: How Faith Communities Inspire Hope, Strengthen Neighborhoods, and Build the Future. I love John Kasich, and my relationship with John Kasich goes back quite a bit to when he was a congressman from Ohio. My mentor was Peter Jennings, and one of my jobs in the job I had at ABC, political director, was Peter would say, bring in to the office when they're in New York interesting political people so I can meet them and get to know them. And I brought in all sorts of people. I brought in Barack Obama, brought in George Allen, who was a senator and governor from Virginia, who thought he was going to be president. A long list of people. Mike Pence, future vice president. I brought in John Kasich, and the two of them hit it off. I was like third wheel on a date. They loved each other so much. And because Peter was such a big deal, because back in those days, the three network anchors, Tom, Dan, and Peter, no cable, and they had tens of millions of viewers. Peter was often a bigger celebrity than the people he was covering. And I went to him once to New Hampshire and covering the presidential candidates, and it was like embarrassing that nobody wanted to talk to the candidates. They wanted to talk to Peter. So anyway, both of them were incredibly grateful for me to have made that introduction. They really enjoyed each other, and for Kasich, it was like about the most famous person he'd ever met was Peter Jennings. So he and I covered him for a long time. Then he became governor of Ohio, and I interviewed him a fair amount in different jobs that I had. Here is a bit of an interview I did with him at the Republican Governors Association meeting in 2014. So like more than a decade ago. This is number 12, please.
Governor of Ohio, I talked to a lot of Republican politicians, donors, about who they want to see run in 2016. What's the one thing they all say to me is their doubt? Do you know?
Don't know.
They all wonder about your attention span. They all say you've got ADD and that you can't focus on one thing for a long period of time. Is there any truth to that?
Well, here's the answer to that. Some people can play multi-layer chess, okay? There used to be in Washington, a hit on me that, I wasn't listening.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we got the budget balanced, and I was one of the chief architects of it. You know how hard it is to get a federal budget to balance?
Anyway, I look at that. It makes my skin crawl because to me, he's furious at me, and it makes me uncomfortable because I like the guy quite a bit. Maybe that's not how you saw it. Anyway, he'll be here. Hopefully, he won't get that angry at me. For those of you, I never read the chat, but I glance at it. This is my real hair. It's all real, and I've never colored in my life. It's its real color. Is what it looks like. Now, when I grow a beard occasionally, it's got white in it, and people say, well, that must mean you're dyeing your hair. No, I can't explain it to you. My beard grows in white. This is the color of my hair. Never have colored it. If it started to go gray, not sure what I would do, but I've never had to face that choice. Thank you for asking. I'm going to read the news, tell you what's going on. We'll listen to some stuff from the White House briefing, some developments on the immigration front, lots on the economy, some other odds and ends. And then we'll be taking your questions both on the news in general and for Governor Kasich and about his book. So if you'd like to be on the conversation and you're here on the Two-Way platform, please raise your hand and we'll get to many of you. If you've never raised your hand before, tonight would be a great night to be first in. We had 3 new people this morning on the morning meeting. It was fantastic. If you're watching on YouTube or on X, don't put smack in the chat. And I say that with a special emphasis tonight because John Kasich is not a favorite of MAGA, right? He turned against the Trump Republican Party, ran against Trump in 2016, and it's been as much aligned with the Democrats in some ways as the Republicans because he does not like the Trump Republican Party. I'll say to you all what I always say: listen to John Kasich, hear him out. You may disagree with what he says, but don't attack me for booking him on. Don't attack him for saying what he believes. He's a very principled guy, very smart guy. If you don't like him because you care more about the MAGA agenda or believe more in the MAGA agenda than his more establishment brand of politics, although he's got a lot of outsider anti-Washington sensibilities. I bet you there's a lot about John Kasich's views that you'll like, but give him a chance. Give me a chance to talk to him rather than saying, well, I don't like the guy because he's not pro-Trump. You don't have to like him, but rather than hate on him, listen to him. And even if you disagree, you could say, well, what an interesting opportunity to learn what people who don't like Donald Trump think. He was the Republican governor of Ohio. He used to appear on Fox News all the time. He's a very smart guy. Some people say he has ADD, but that notwithstanding, he's been a successful private sector career. I'll say again, this platform is about listening to people even when you disagree, rather than saying, I'll never watch Two-Way Tonight again because they had John Kasich on and he's a rhino. There, I said it. Thank you again for watching. Very happy for everybody to be part of the Two-Way community. Here we go. A lot of big news today on the economy. Nothing huge. Dow was up for the day. There's some data out on consumer confidence. It's very far down. So it's interesting. There's some positive economic, and this has been true even before the tariff brouhaha. A lot of positive economic data on unemployment, on inflation, on growth. But consumer confidence has not been a good place, and the president's ratings on the economy have not been great. And none of those second two things have been helped by the tariff brouhaha. I've talked another day talking to people in the private sector who are extremely upset that the president has screwed up the economy and that he's heading us towards either a deep recession or stagflation. The bond market is still unsettled, not as bad as it was during the days that caused the president to switch course on tariffs, but still not great. And still a lot of questions about how are they going to make all these bilateral trade deals? How are they going to navigate a trade war with China? What if China doesn't give in at all? And again, still, particularly in the establishment of the Republican Party, the media establishment, a lot of questioning of the competence of Team Trump and the president himself for creating this mess by themselves, by picking a fight and then backing down, but continuing to have tariffs on and not, in the view of the critics, having a clear way out. So you can go on X or into my inbox or walk into any big investment company or bank, and you can find lots of people who are saying, we're done with Donald Trump and his team. They've proven a level of bad judgment and incompetence so stark that we just hope we can get through the next few years. Doesn't mean they wish Kamala Harris was president. Doesn't mean they won't welcome the reconciliation bill and more energy production and less regulation and lower taxes. Welcome all that. But there's been, for some, a real divide line that they're done with this administration. I don't know how big that group is. I don't know if the people who are saying that to me and publicly on Twitter are going to stand by that. But it's quite striking how much of a watershed moment this was for many people. At the same time, the president and his team move forward with a great deal of confidence. So here is Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, talking about her optimism, the president's optimism about the economy, number two.
I think there's a great optimism in this economy, great optimism for the American people, a lot of reason for people to feel optimistic. The president is, as I just said, trying to renegotiate the global trade agenda that has ripped off the American people for far too long. As he said, this is going to be a period of transition. He wants consumers to trust in him, and they should trust in him. Look at what he did in his first term. And I just want to reiterate all of the reasons to be confident since you asked, Jeff. For those watching at home, yesterday the CPI report, inflation declined massively. Consumer prices are dropping for the first time in years. Energy prices are down. In fact, oil prices are down 20% since this president took office. Wholesale prices fell again. There have been trillions of dollars in investments into this country. Every day the president is signing executive orders to cut regulation, especially when it comes to Environmental Protection Agency, our energy industry. That's going to unleash the economic boom in this country that we saw in the president's first term. So trust in President Trump. He knows what he's doing. This is a proven economic formula.
They put out a press release today from the White House, a press statement with a bunch of links to articles about companies thinking about or moving production to America or beefing up their production here. And I read one, it was a story from last month I hadn't seen, from the New York Post, about a New Jersey toy manufacturer who's going to make more toys in America. Incredibly interesting story. And it's examples like that the White House is citing, saying it's realistic to move production of all sorts of things, not just toys, back to America. Number three, here's Caroline Leavitt talking about the eagerness of countries besides China to make bilateral trade deals in the next 90 days with the Trump administration.
75 countries have now reached out to the Trump administration, eager to address the trade issues that have exploited America and hurt our workers in the process. The phones have been ringing off the hook to make deals, and these countries wisely heeded President Trump's warning not to retaliate, and as a result, they were rewarded with a 90-day pause and substantially lower reciprocal tariff rates during this period so potential solutions can be achieved. Past presidents just willingly accepted the failed status quo on trade that ripped off our workers and our companies. But that's not who this president is. He creates his own leverage and negotiates deals better than anyone else who has sat in the Oval Office before him. And that process is currently underway.
So there's a bunch of processes underway now. And I say to the critics of the president and his supporters, you got to judge them by what happens. And a lot of these things may well happen in Q2 or Q3, well before there's shutdowns of auto plants or anything else like that in significant numbers. But there's these bilateral trade deals, big. And if the president and his team navigated successfully, I think the events of the last week will have been okay, right? If there's bilateral trade deals that really benefit the United States and achieve at least some of the goals that the president's talked about as he pursues tariffs. And number two is a reconciliation package in the House, lower taxes, less regulation, spending cuts, and energy, more production and distribution and export. Navigating a trade war with China successfully, dealing with Ukraine. There's a bunch of really big things. Middle East, there's a bunch of really big things. If he succeeds in them, then I think you'd have to say, incredible first year. We shall see. All right. Speaking of Ukraine, number 6, the president's special envoy for everything, Mr. Witkoff, is in Moscow tonight, meeting with Vladimir Putin. Here's some Kremlin video that's a little bit odd. I'm not sure what to make of it, but this is Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Putin shaking hands. Roll number 6, please. Not sure what language they were speaking or what's going on there, but anyway, so that conversation's taking place. Didn't happen under Joe Biden, so that's a difference. You might think better, might think worse. The Iran negotiations taking place this weekend. Caroline Leavitt said at the briefing today, all options are on the table. The president announced settlements with 4 or 5 more major law firms with massive commitments for pro bono work for his agenda from some more blue chip firms. The president announced today that he's supporting making daylight savings time permanent after being on the fence publicly about that previously. The president has a physical today, and the White House says they're going to release a lot of information. I have been throughout my career a strong advocate for a lot of information about a president's health, and no president or presidential candidate has been as forthcoming as I think they should be for the public interest. It is a testament to the failure of the media and any other interested party, but primarily the media, to force presidents to do this because they can get away with it, and they always have. They should have every test under the sun. The full test results should be made available, and then the doctors should come and answer questions. And the news organizations, rather than sending political reporters to ask the doctors questions, should send their medical reporters, because the political reporters don't have a clue what to ask the doctor and how to read the report. That's what should happen. But none of that happens. And one of the many, many reasons why what President Biden and his team did to cover up his mental decline is outrageous, is it now has allowed the Trump administration to do what you're about to hear Caroline Leavitt do, which is to say, well, compared to the last administration, which didn't make the doctor available and participated in a conspiracy of cover-up and collusion, including with the media, to make it not at all transparent what the state of Joe Biden's mental health was. The thing I said throughout was there's one of two possibilities. Either he did not have a test for Alzheimer's, which is and outraged, not just for the public, but his family. If my father or my spouse had the traits and the behaviors he did, I'd get him an Alzheimer's test. So either he had it and they didn't release the results, even though it showed he didn't have it, or he never got it, which is outrageous, or he had it and it showed a problem and they didn't tell us. None of those are good. None of those are good. If he secretly had the test and they didn't release it and it didn't show he had Alzheimer's, that's the best possibility. But even that's not good. Okay? And probably not the outcome that occurred. So here's Caroline Leavitt taking full advantage of what Joe Biden and the media and Joe Biden's team and the media did by saying they would release some information, but I bet you they don't release everything they should. I bet they don't make the doctor available for full questioning. Number one, please.
As I have said, the president is undergoing his long-scheduled physical. It's a yearly physical that every president receives, and we will provide an update on that by the president's physician as soon as we possibly can.
And it's about the former president and transparency regarding his health.
Well, I can tell you there was certainly a lack of transparency from the former president, from the entire former administration, and frankly, a lot of people in this room when it came to the health and the competence of the former president of the United States, Joe Biden. There was one of the greatest cover-ups and frankly political scandals this nation has ever seen. It's been unraveled in some recent books that are being written by journalists who engaged in that cover-up and scandal, which is quite ironic. But this president is clearly committed to transparency. You in this room see him and hear from him on a daily basis. You in this room know from covering him, it's hard to keep up with him. He is a machine working around the clock every single day. And the physician, after today's physical, will provide an update on the report in the effort of transparency.
Provide an update on the report. So it's, as we speak now, it's 6:17 Eastern time. Happens to be a Friday night. And everybody knows you put out news, you don't want to get a lot of coverage on a Friday. Maybe they'll put it out tonight, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. But I hope that it's a lot of information, and I hope the doctor doesn't just put out one of those letters that the president's gotten in the past that says he's in the best health of anyone this doctor's ever examined. And I hope the doctor takes questions, and I hope if he does, or she does, I think it's a he, that the press sends doctors and medical experts to ask the questions and not knucklehead political reporters. All right, a few more things. Immigration. The administration's asking people who are in the country legally to register. On the one hand, if they registered, they're probably more likely to be deported if they're here illegally. On the other hand, if they don't, they're committing an additional crime of sorts by not registering. Two judges' rulings on immigration cases, one involving someone who's here and the Trump administration wants to send out, and one involving someone was sent out who judge says need to come back. So the person who now the judge says can be deported is that former Columbia University graduate student, Mumud Kali. He, a Louisiana judge today said that in fact he can be deported. I don't know if there'll be appeals or not. I don't know the answer to that. But in theory, now they can deport him unless his lawyers get some sort of stay of that judge's order. And the Maryland father, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was sent improperly out of the country to El Salvador. There's a bit of back and forth with the administration, and we've talked a lot about the possibility that Donald Trump's administration would violate a court order. Okay. And the Supreme Court upheld the decision from the district court judge saying, you got to bring him back. And the district court judge has said, bring him back. I want information. Why isn't he back? It's a 5-hour flight. The president has said he will never defy a judge's order. It does not take an anti-Trump reading of what's going on to say it appears they're defying the order. What they're saying is the judge isn't giving them enough time, that the judge is interfering in the executive branch in a way that a judge shouldn't. And so they need more time. The judge didn't say they could have more time. So I would say they're on the line here, and probably a little bit over, at least, of violating a judge's order for the first time that we know of. And I'll be curious to see what the judge says. But they're taking a position that it's not outlandish. They're saying, Judge, this isn't your turf. We are going to do this the executive branch way. But I think it appears the judge is kind of losing a little bit of patience. If you want to get in on the conversation, please raise your hand. Governor Kasich will be here in just a little bit. We'll talk to him about some issues of the day. and about his book. I just want to make sure I ran through everything I wanted to run through. Talked about that, talked about that, talked about that, talked about that, talked about that. All right. Thank you again for being part of Two Way. Let's go to your questions. Donald, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what is on your mind tonight after you unmute. There you go.
All right. Hi, Mark. First, you were absolutely right. Peter Jennings was the best. No doubt about it. And but the point that I wanted to talk to you is Kasich is originally from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania.
That's
He
true.
He was in the Valley. And if you were from the Steel Valley, you understand why Trump is able to talk past Washington, D.C., New York, the corridor, and get right to the people who are also the people who were COVID ridden and had to deal with layoffs, and in that belt, the massive layoffs of the steel industry. They've gotten a hardening now. And one of the things I wondered if you could talk to Kasich about is being from McKees Rocks, how he understands how Trump is talking past him, because the language that they're using is entirely different. I know Dan in the morning is especially focused on the money. They're not about the money. And I don't think the MAGA people are the money. But the point that I wanted to, and the question I wanted to ask you, you're living in New York now. Since the first of the year, we're now in 80 days. Is it safer there?
Is it safer in New York?
Yes.
I mean, the statistics are not conclusive. Does it feel safer since Donald Trump became president? It's about the same. I mean, I think our mayor is still our mayor, and I think he's the fundamental problem. But it feels about the same. I never felt as unsafe as some people did. I've lived here a long time. I lived here in the late 80s, and then I've lived here most of the 90s onward. And it was much worse back when I first lived here. I mean, I ride the subway at night and go in Central Park when it's dark. So I don't think I don't have a sense that it's safer since Donald Trump got to be president, but I didn't think it was that unsafe before. That's my subjective view. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I ask this is that with all the things that are going on, and it's now about 80 days, if you were to praise what Trump is doing, he's obviously done a lot of things.
Yeah.
And especially with immigration and getting people back and getting the border secure. Obviously, it was a problem. But it seems as though the country seems to feel safer that it's getting taken care of. I don't think they wanted everybody.
Yeah, maybe. I don't feel that directly, but you might be right. I don't feel it directly. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being on. Appreciate it. All right. Aaron, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know, after you unmute, where you are and what's on your mind.
Oh, there we go.
You're good. Go ahead, Aaron. Oh, you muted yourself again. Try one more time. There you go.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Thanks so much, Mark. Great job over the years and going way back to the old days.
Thank you, sir.
So I think something I haven't seen a lot of in the last week or two while we've been going through this whole sort of financial and trade-based shock is the discussion from a banking and credit standpoint. That while we might feel, and everyone at the sort of consumer level feels a trade shock when you go shopping, or you could feel that, and you could look at your portfolio or look at your retirement or your pensions retirement, and that could be down behind the scenes. And I know we often like to believe that there's bad actors behind the scenes, but whether we think that or not, those the banking system itself globally represents really the liquidity that we have for credit around the world, that companies use, that governments use, that we use, whether we know it or not, when we go and we use our credit card, or we get a line of credit or a HELOC, or we get a car loan for our kid, or whatever it is. And I think most people don't get that 90% of our financial system is non-banking. It's other financial products. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is that it looks like there's some substantial risks now in credit liquidity, and that's a very unique type of crisis. You typically, when you have that, it cascades and it generates this multiplier effect through the system, and you can't just sort of swing at things and say get better, because what happens is the confidence in all the counterparties falls apart, and you can't just smash them together and say like each other and trust each other and put each other's capital at risk. And it doesn't seem that the administration either understands this, is concerned by it, even though we heard that there was, maybe one of the reasons that the 90-day pause was brought on was that the part of the credit swap market was seizing up. But it doesn't seem like there was a lot of messaging beyond that. And living up in the Northeast, I know a lot of people in this space, and they are all moving all their marks a lot closer, right? So that means everyone's trading down, and that runs a real risk, because that means it puts a dangerous spread between the long end of credit and the short end. And if nobody steps in, meaning the Federal Reserve, we run a substantial risk of a credit crisis, which would be probably some percentage as bad as the global financial crisis. And I'm wondering, just out of your reporting and your contacts, your communications with others, how much you hear people behind the scenes talking about this versus willing to come up in front. And maybe some of that is, they don't want to generate even more fear than what people already have. So that's my big question and concern.
All right. I thought we were going to get John Kasich to answer that question, but Aaron, I can tell you that they're aware of that problem. I can tell you that they've heard people like Jamie Dimon and other folks raise the same issue. And I can tell you that it was at least a factor in their reconsideration of policy. My question to you is, if the president asked you, if he said, Aaron, I saw you on two-way tonight and I share your concern, what should I do? What would you ask him to, what would be the right steps they could take now to ameliorate it?
I think number one, they have to bring Powell, the head of the ECB, Bank of Japan, to show a substantial confidence building measure that everyone gets it, and everyone and the adults are in the room and they're monitoring, and there's not going to be any, let's say, radical approaches that could disrupt the markets, especially credit markets. And then I would guess the next piece of it would be to maybe do a sort of test case infusion to banks, kind of like a like a test Zelle payment that you send to your kid for $1 before you send the real money, just to basically prove to the market that, hey, we have it, don't worry. And I think the longer we go without that, that just generates a higher risk quotient, which is very dangerous. I think far more dangerous than the stock price going down.
Aaron, I agree with you. And where you take advantage, we have a man who used to run the Columbus office of a major national financial services firm. Governor Kasich, welcome. Right, there you go. Go ahead.
I'm here.
Governor, I'm very glad for you joining. We're going to talk about your book, but Aaron's got a question about the international economic system. You know my dad's joke about the international economic system. There's only two people who understand it, and unfortunately they disagree. So we know there's a lot of fuzziness. But Aaron, rephrase your question for the governor and let him respond, because he knows very knowledgeable about this stuff.
Thank you, Governor, for joining us. My question is that it looks like our credit markets have a liquidity crisis, or we're the beginning of a liquidity crisis, and we run a risk of some of those markets seizing up. And it doesn't look like the White House and the administration is messaging publicly to both the financial system and also the public that A, they understand that that's a substantial risk, and B, that they are operating to prevent that from occurring. And I'm wondering if A, you believe that's true, and B, if you do, what would you advise that their policy should be? And once again, thank you for joining us.
Aaron, I mean, first of all, you look at what's happened with the bond market and look what's happened with treasuries. People wanting to get rid of treasuries, which is really scary. But you know what? Look, this is a picnic compared to what will happen if, in fact, people stop buying our debt. And at $37 trillion, at some point, whoever you want to talk about, Wall Street geniuses, people like Druckenmiller, I mean, there's a lot of other, Glenn Schiffman used to work with me, a brilliant guy, so many of the people. Dalio, you saw him writing about it the other day. When you get to the point where the debt is so high, you, number one, have to pay a premium in order to have the debt paid for, right, in treasuries. Or two, people just won't buy them anymore. And then you run a printing press. And when you run a printing press, you begin to systematically destroy the value of the dollar. And what that causes is a meltdown for not only ourselves, of course, but for our children and for grandchildren. And they just refuse to deal with it. The Congress doesn't want to deal with it. There's not the leadership there that says, I got to put the country first. And if that means that I get hurt somehow, that's life. And it was just it's just 25 years ago. Just 25 years ago. I mean, that sounds like it's 100 years ago, but it's not. We balanced the budget. And we paid down the largest amount of the publicly held debt, and we cut capital gains taxes, and it was just an amazing time. And then Bush came in and he started spending money, and we went the other way. So I'm concerned about this because it's the whole tariff fear, right? I mean, when you don't know what the heck is going to happen, you're not going to invest. And this whole thing about bringing manufacturing jobs, yeah, but we have advanced manufacturing now. We're not interested in making potato chips. We're interested in making computer chips. So some manufacturing can be onshored, but we also have an economy that's so dynamic, it's constantly changing and constantly getting up the food chain to other things that they think are more valuable. And then you have these small little things called investors. How many investors do you know that are thinking of making massive investments in creating a new steel company? So, we have to think about all these things and be honest with people and deal with the debt in a realistic way. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And it scares the living daylights out of me because what we're seeing now is just a minor issue compared to what would happen if they stop buying our treasuries and we start running a printing press. And this is both a Republican and a Democrat problem. It's not limited to one. We got the budget balanced because the Clinton people, we meant business, and the Clinton people meant business, and we made a deal. And we had great time. But this is really this is a self-inflicted wound that may wake us up somehow. So what would I tell the administration to do? Back off on the trade stuff, one country at a time. You don't go and you can't use sledgehammer on anything. We definitely need to reform the government. Reform the government doesn't mean we have to cut it all. We have to reform it, figure out how it works better. But the Doge thing is we're just going to go in and fire all these people and we're going to use a sledgehammer. It doesn't work. And they haven't probably saved that much money. I'd be interested in knowing how much they did. But all that needs to be tackled, and it needs to be tackled by a leader. It needs to be tackled by the Congress, which, by the way, has abdicated all of their authority and pulled all the power in the executive branch. It's kind of unbelievable. But that's what I think. And am I optimistic? Yeah, I'm optimistic. At some point, people are going to figure out what the heck they need to do, reclaim their power, reclaim their authority, reclaim their principles, reclaim their backbone. And we'll get back on it, but you can't wait forever.
Aaron, thank you. Governor, welcome. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but we're going to focus on the book because I really want you to understand what you wrote about and why. I will say this is a man who was the budget chairman when this budget was balanced. And for those who would like to say John Kasich is not a conservative, find me a subsequent chair under a Republican or Democratic president who balanced the budget as budget chair. You won't find one. So we're talking about conservative, care about our kids and grandkids. I want to start by showing this video, number 11, please, just so people can get a sense of how little John Kasich has aged since 2014.
Stood out at this meeting, I think, by just being, if you're pardon the expression, just like John Kasich. You've talked in a broad way about, different from your colleagues here, about Common Core, about immigration, about Medicaid. What is having you stand apart from them? Are they more like you than the press is making it out, or are you different than some of your colleagues here who seem more confrontational about the president?
Well, since you're a great analyst, why don't you figure that out?
What's your view?
My view is I'm who I am. You know, I mean,
But do you think you're different than the others
no,
here?
I'm not going to be. No, that'd be a swipe at my colleagues. Look, they're smart people. I have a lot of respect for what they've been able to do, what they've gone through. For me, this is the things that I think that make sense to me.
All right. You haven't changed a bit, right? Not a bit. Raise your hand if you want to get in on the conversation. We're going to talk about your book. Book is called Heaven Help Us, How Faith Communities Inspire Hope, Strengthen Neighborhoods, and Build the Future. This is your, how many books have you written already?
This is the 6th.
The 6th. All right. We're about tied. Explain why you wrote it and how you wrote it.
Well, first of all, the book is designed to give an individual a path or a thought about finding their purpose in life. We all need a purpose. This allows them to find their purpose and at the same time building a stronger community. I wrote it because I think I knew that during COVID, pastors across the country were being pressured to put politics in the pulpit. I didn't like it. I gathered a group of theologians. We couldn't even agree on 2 sentences about what it meant to be a believer. So somebody said, why don't you write your own book? I wrote a book a number of years ago called Courage is Contagious. It was a story of individuals who had done amazing things to change the world. This book is sort of 2.0 because I believe that the institutions of the church, the synagogue, and the mosque provide a sort of a club. You want to run for office, you need a clubhouse. This is a clubhouse for change. And what allows you to do is get in these institutions, present your ideas, and what could they be about? The homeless, human trafficking, how we deal with autism, what we do about poverty, there's just every subject you can think about. And the beautiful thing about this is if people get in an institution, present their ideas, they will find that they will get material support, psychological support, and they can then go and change the world. It puts religion in a kind of a different point of view. It's not about all this judgment. It's certainly no politics in this book really at all. And it's really designed to say to people, think about what you want to do to change the world. Go to these institutions or join one that you care about and begin to take your ideas and translate them into action. So if you're out there on a hands-off rally, okay, that's great, but what are you going to do the next day? Or if you are confused or whatever, and you don't know what you should be, you don't like the politics, you don't like the yelling and screaming, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? So, this gives you something to do. It can help build our faith institutions, at the same time, building community. And it's stories of wonderful people who had enough faith to know that over time, they would help change the world, at least the part of the world in which they live.
One of the gifts you have, Senator Bill Bradley has it too. You understand the country and you're able to understand it and tell the story of the country through the eyes of everyday Americans who you meet. Tell us 1 or 2 stories of folks you write about in the book and what they illustrate for you about your theme.
Well, there's one guy, I hate to use this big example, but there's one guy who met Mother Teresa. He is similar like I am. His mother and my mother and father were killed by a drunk driver. He lost his father and his mother severely injured. They were adopted by a family, lived in a trailer park, food stamps, the whole thing. Graduated from college, went out there and became a ghostwriter, met Mother Teresa, who said to him, what are you doing to make a difference? He got on the plane, he flew home, he called his friends, they got a pickup truck, bought a couple bags of groceries in the back of it, and today he is now feeding 571,000 people every single day. He's been to places where there's been terrible storms and crises, and he uses churches to buttress and to provide not just immediate help, but long-term help. It's just an amazing story, from a bag of groceries in the back of a pickup to 500,000 people a day being fed, and people all over the world. There's a guy who had a dream, Mark. He had a dream, 15 years it took him. He had this dream. It was so vivid, he knew he needed to act on it. He went to his synagogue. He told the rabbi what his dream was. The rabbi said, well, let's go try to do it. I think it's crazy. It probably won't work. But the congregation says, okay, go ahead and try. He gets together with a group of Muslims. They then bring the Christians in. His dream, it took him 15 years to do it, to buy a plot of land and locate on that land a synagogue, a church, and a mosque with a common center for people to hang out together, for kids to get to know one another, all from one vivid dream. Or remember that story? A lot of people say, why is it in here? The shootings down in Charleston, where the murderer killed 9 people in that AME church, and the people went to the arraignment and asked and told the shooter that they were offering forgiveness. I mean, in all the wars and all the problems and all the fights we have personally, forgiveness, grace, love, that's, kind of where I have been. And it's what else can I tell you?
All right. If you want to ask a question, Governor Kasich, about the book, please raise your hand. If you want to sneak in a question on another topic for him, you probably wouldn't object, but we'll try to focus on the book. So is this a how-to book? Is it a book that says, all right, I'd like to be involved with a place of worship and help to try to do good, and to give you an explanation of what they need to do, from a granular perspective?
No, Mark, it's not that. It's sort of a self-discovery when you go in and want to do something. If you believe in something very firmly, for example, fighting human trafficking, or doing something like helping people with literacy, you go in there and you just say to the people around, I'd like to do this. Can we take a project on? And it takes faith that it can be realized, and it takes determination, and it takes effort. And if you do all those things, you'll end up being successful. And you read the stories, they'll be sort of, I guess, descriptive about how you go ahead and do it, because all of them have done it in a different way. And the stories are really pretty remarkable. They're inspiring, and it shows what can be. It shows what you can do, because all the great things that have happened in our country, these changes have come from the bottom up, not the top down. We're focusing on the tariffs and this and that, and what are we going to do about the Senate and all that stuff? I like that old thought about, if the Secretary of State and my trash man went on vacation, who would I miss more? The fact is that all politics are local. And if you want to build a stronger country and bring the issue of faith, which connects us, which allows us to see other individuals and other people is made in the image of the Lord, not something that's our enemy. If you have all that, then you start bottom up changing the country, just what happened with the social gospel movement in the turn of the 20th century, where we began to have decent laws around the children's working and women, because we went from the Gilded Age to where there needed to be change in the society. To quote Robert Putnam, from an I society to a we society. We are now back in an I society, and we need to find our way back to a we society, because united, we accomplish more.
I'm going to get to your questions after one more from me, so please, if you want to be in the conversation, raise your hand. Let's sell some books in a more aggressive way. If you want a good read, great stories, and you want to uplift your spirit, be inspired by others, and also inspire yourself to action, it's the right book. I'll ask you to answer the question. This book should be bought by whom? Who should buy this book?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's limited, because as people get older, they start losing confidence in what they can do sometimes. People in the middle, instead of just be focusing on all the dollars and cents and figuring out how they can continue to be successful, can slow themselves down. And young people who are increasingly hungry for something to believe in after coming out of COVID, it can help them as well. I don't see this book limited to, like one age group. I think we can all, before the time when we leave our earth, can all do something more to help build a stronger society. And I happen to believe that at the end of our lives, beyond life here, we'll be measured for what we did, and be rewarded for what we did, and maybe for what we didn't do.
Amen. Let's start from someone who's from the Ohio. Dean, where do you live in Ohio? Tell the governor.
Thank you, Mark. I'm down here in North Canton, just north of the Pro Football Hall of Fame that I'm always spouting
Yeah,
about
it's
often
north of
here.
Canton. Right. It's right
Yeah,
north of
yeah,
Canton.
absolutely. They're doing
North,
some nice
north.
things. I hope they can continue. They might need your help down there. I don't
Up
know.
there. I live in Columbus.
Oh yeah, well, they're having a little bit of trouble at the Hall of Fame right now. You might
Oh,
have
I know
heard.
that. I know they are. Yeah, I'm aware of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I don't know. For what it's worth, I look. Mark says buy a book. I buy a book, and your number one new release in Church and State on Amazon right now. So some people must be listening. I'm curious.
Hey, can I say, Dean, interrupt
Yeah,
you a second? I don't care about having the book be a success for me. Honestly, I would like it to be, but the more the book's about me, the less well it will do. The more it's about, the big guy up there, the better it will do. And I just want the message to get out. It's not about, I got to have these big books and baloney. It'll all take care of itself.
oh man, Governor Kasich, this is why I loved you from the very beginning. I'm a Trumper right now, and I'll wait on the politics, but I'll sneak a little bit of politics in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Faith and politics just are strange bedfellows sometimes. How do you maintain your principled, centered, faith-based leadership with maybe things that I would believe that things you don't agree with today? How do you square that as you
Yeah.
continue?
Well, first of all, let me declare myself a first-class hypocrite and knucklehead. Okay, just so we know, I don't put myself up there as some knight in shining knight in shining armor. I happen to believe that if you become a person of faith or you work towards it, it's all embedded in love. So, Dean, you and I can have really strong disagreements, but that's cool, man. I like you. I can disagree with you and still like you. I don't have to look at you as an enemy. And, I was in politics, elected office for 30 years. I've been, in the media for, 40 years. Been on all these shows, debate all this stuff. I mean, I had to deal with guys like Halperin, okay? And I was even dealt with him when he wasn't doing so well, trying to help him then. Why? Because that's what we do. And so what I would say is, it's okay what you believe. I'm going to respect you for your belief. I'm going to argue with you, but that's okay. It's just fine because we're really brothers together, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And, when I pursue, first of all, when it comes to faith, I don't have a lot of time to get down into the ditch here to have all these debates about all these issues. I'm working for the big guy, and that's love your neighbor and love God. That's it. The rest of it takes care of itself, and we can have any kind of heated discussion that you want. And what's happening today is if you don't think the way I think, then you're somehow, you're a screwball and I don't like you. And it's just stupid. It's killing the country.
Well, thank you,
Dean,
Governor Kasich, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Dean, thank you for being here. Jen, welcome in from Oklahoma. Question for Governor Kasich.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What you're saying, it's like music to my ears. I've been really concerned about sort of the spiritual poverty that we seem to be facing right now. I have read a poll the other day, and it was about whether it was justified to assassinate Trump or justified to assassinate Elon Musk. And the combined totals of the two top parts were over 40% to say it would be okay to do that. And it was okay to destroy other people's property. And I thought, what has happened to our country?
Yeah, well, go ahead. I don't know if you wanted to pose something, but
Yeah.
Whenever we drift away from these principles, and look, if you don't want to be a believer, I mean, that's okay with me. I'm not going to shove anything down your throat. Halperin's known me a long time. Probably didn't even know that I really. Well, did you know I cared about this stuff, Mark? Maybe you did.
I did. We literally discussed it the first time we ever talked.
But if you want to be somebody that just wants to build a healthier society without faith, I'm cool about that. But I don't think in a nation of 300 million plus without some guidelines. And remember, this is not just about the Christians. This is about the Jewish community and about the Muslims. And Zondervan, my publisher, wanted me to include everybody because, God's big enough to take care of himself. And you can be a Muslim, you can be of the Jewish faith, you can be a Christian. It's fine, whatever. Just get something going on. And so I think the more that people can understand what this faith is all about, I don't have the right to hurt you. I just don't have that right. And that's what I think. And there's so many people who feel like they're victims. I'm a victim. I didn't think about this country. We go around and we hear politicians now saying, well, we've been taken advantage of. Could you imagine living anywhere but America? What we have in this country. So when you try to create this idea of victimhood, you drive rage and anger, and you took my stuff. Nonsense. I don't buy it. I don't accept it about America. And I don't accept it about individuals. So I would say to you, Jen, are you an elected official?
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, the only thing I can say to you is the more we get in those silos and we consider other people the enemy, I've said this already. I answered it with Dean.
Yeah.
I think.
Jen, thank you. Chris Simmons from Georgia has a lot in common with John Kasich, I happen to know, but Chris, floor is yours.
Well, this is an honor for me. You're one of the Republicans I love. I've always said
that was my problem. None of the Republicans love me, but the Democrats did.
Well, that's because you weren't mean and nasty enough, Mr. Kasich. You were too fair and balanced and a good human being, and your party was looking for something else. It's quite apparent they were looking for something else. The only place I don't totally agree with you on is. And my father was a Baptist minister. I know all about people who go to church.
Yeah.
I think if we could just get everybody to agree in the principles you espouse, whether it's related to a religion or not, because a lot of the folk that claim they're religious aren't really living their religion out. But the principles you espouse, I think, are beautiful. And I guess the question I would quickly pose is this. What do you think it's going to take for the country to care again about the morals and principles of its leaders? Because we made it pretty clear recently we don't really care too much about that.
Thank you, Chris. Great question. Governor.
Let me think. I guess what I would say is that there are two things that I think are important. I know you're going to think this is a little crazy, but I think we need something of a spiritual renewal. And I don't mean I don't know how it would even come about. The social gospel movement started in the churches and it rose up and was embraced by everybody, just not the faith-based people. It was embraced by everybody. And the power of that movement started to change elected officials. I think, first of all, there has to be some sort of an inspiration that comes to us that helps us to grab a hold of the country again, number one. And number two, it does matter who our leaders are. It does matter whether they have certain principles. I think it does. And that's kind of the way that I operate. I've operated that way, and I think Halperin will tell you I've taken a lot of heat for it, because what I'm most concerned about is somebody who is a divider as opposed to a uniter. I can't judge everybody's principles and their morals and all that, but I'm looking for a uniter. I'm not looking for a divider. With a uniter, we can grow. With the divider, we shrink.
Yeah. Chris, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Young Kim, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are. Question for the governor.
I'm calling in from Chappaqua, New York. Thank you for coming and fielding questions from us. This is fantastic. And I was just watching through YouTube. When I heard you about faith in your book, I had to immediately go in. So I thank you for your topic, because this is, there's a lot of things that's happening in our society, and this lack of faith, right, as you call it, I think it's much needed. And I just wanted to point out that you mentioned this should be a bottom up, but I think it could be a top down. What I mean by top down, it has to come from a transcendental being, a God, that whatever the worship may be, they're the one who should be directing us. You mentioned other things about human rights. human rights is something that's derived from God,
Right.
right? You also mentioned about the image of God. So I think this is, I don't know, I'd argue that this is what defines American exceptionalism to a certain extent. Not all
Well,
of it,
we have a
right?
playbook. You can figure out what the playbook is the Old and the New Testament together. I told this one woman when I expanded Medicaid in Ohio, she was yelling at me and telling me that, I sold out. And I said, well, ma'am, I've got this new thing, this new book. It's got an old part and a new part, and they put it into one book. And if you can't afford it, I'll buy you one. But the fact is that the roadmap is there. And what we learned through that book are all the things that make me an idiot and a hypocrite, whether it's greed or whether it's wanting to be important, ego, any of those things. The more I can hold those things off, the better off I can be. Kindness, another thing, forgiveness. The more I can do that. Now, you don't have to be a believer, but that's a pretty darn good roadmap to follow. And I think, again, as a country as big as we are, we need a roadmap, plain and simple. But I'm not really here to say, read the book and then I'm proselytizing. I do believe in what I'm telling you. Read the book and you don't have to be a believer. Maybe you'll become a believer if you read the book and say, how the heck did those people do those things? Young Kim. So,
Yeah, proselytizing, we only are witnesses. The conversion comes from above.
yeah.
So, right, we're just preaching, right? Right.
I'm not going to shove myself down anybody's throat.
Thank you
Young
very
Kim,
much. This
thank
has
you.
been very, just a comment I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
very
Thank you
much.
for joining. Appreciate it. Deborah, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and a question for the governor.
Yes, hi. I'm in New York City, and I'm wondering if there's something in the water in Ohio because Representative Ryan is a meditator and has written about that. And then you're speaking about this. And I'm wondering if there's something really good in Ohio. That's not my question. I was just observing this. I'm wondering, and I'm loving these multi-faith efforts too. I'm very interested in interfaith events. What I'm curious about is I've watched so many churches, synagogues, and such being torn apart because of politics coming in and actually entering into it, especially with some of what's more called like critical social justice or some of these particular more left-wing ways of looking at doing things and such that and like people leaving. So I noticed my nervousness about people coming in and bringing, projects into a church and that causing division. At the same time, obviously, it's wonderful to serve your community. So I don't know if you've seen, I know people who have been forced out of their own ministry because they didn't hold the same political views as their parishioners. And I don't know if you're encountering that in the Midwest as much as we're having it on the coasts. But
Deborah,
have you seen that or?
Yeah. No, I think there have been great successes in New York City. Tim Keller, a preacher, he's not a fundamentalist, but frankly, he's I don't want to describe him that way, but he's not a fundamentalist, but he's a traditional kind of preacher. He went to New York City and became a rock star. He opened up churches up there, and he couldn't even tell anybody where he was going to be because everybody would gravitate because he had multiple churches. He had great success in New York. We've lost him. He's passed away at a young age. I didn't know him, but I know many of his friends and his contemporaries. No, I think a positive message. If somebody wants to come in and bring some negative kind of political stuff in, then the leader in the church has to say no. And I think it was young Kim who asked a question about character, and I'm not sure I answered it right. We kind of know what character is. If we were to spend the rest of this thing defining what character is, telling the truth, having compassion, not being selfish, all those kind of things, the people here are not bringing some right-wing or left-wing political agenda in. There's a woman who has an adult son who's got autism, and she's trying to figure out where he's going to live when she gets older and he gets older. I mean, there's somebody in here saying, I want to fix the foster care system. It's too mean. And she went into the church and she did it. There's a nun in Philadelphia who, tell you what she did. It was freezing outside. She was in a public building. They were closing the building. She put her foot in the door and said, I'm not getting out of this thing till you let these people out on the sidewalk who are freezing come in and spend the night. This is not about some political agenda. This is about just flat out helping people. And when we get down feeding the hungry and helping the poor and healing the sick, then we got time for all this political crap. But until then, let's stay away from it.
Deborah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Don't buy the book to make the governor rich or a bestseller or to make him feel good. Buy the book to help change America, change your soul, change your community. Heaven help us. It's on sale now. You'll see him on other shows promoting the book. He'll get about 2.5 minutes, and they'll spend 2 minutes saying, we're going to get to the book in a minute, but how much do you hate Donald Trump? Not on this show.
If I had written a book, attacking Donald Trump, it would be doing great, but I didn't do that. And I didn't do it any of the time. And I don't go and attack his character. I've never done that. I disagree, but I don't get into that. And but Marx is right. If, the real question is, when I thought about writing this, I thought this would be a perfect time, that everybody would be done with the election, that people would want to take a breath and they want to reorient themselves. I don't know whether that's true or not. We're going to find out. But we all need a little break, no matter who we are. And by the way, to the lady that was just on, I find that taking some time during the day and doing some meditation, and it doesn't have to be faith-based meditation, is really useful to human beings, and it calms them down.
Yeah. Governor, anything else you want to say about the book or anything else before we close?
Nope, that's it, Mark. I appreciate having the opportunity to come on.
You're nice to make time. I recommend the book to everybody. And again, buy it to help yourself, your community, your country, your soul. Don't buy it to make John Kasich rich, because he already is. Governor, great to see you. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
And come back when you make the bestseller list.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Right. Thanks. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you at 9 a.m. Monday on the morning meeting with Dan and Sean, and then this program back at 6. Sam, hello. That is adorable. Wait, can't end on that. We got to see this. Sam, what's going on here? What's going on here, Sam?
Uh-oh, we got some loud music going here. This is Baby Sam. This is Samuel the Fourth.
Samuel the Fourth is kind of awesome.
He is.
Look
He's
at that.
loving his YouTube show right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep him off of YouTube, but YouTube Kids has gotten better.
Yeah, understood. Well, you're very nice to share that young gentleman with us, and a great way to close the week. Thank you for joining. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again to Governor Kasich. See you Monday 9 a.m. Eastern time. Have a great weekend. Bye, Samuel.